From Transport Topics in Washington, D.C., this is RoadSigns. Here is your host, Seth Clevenger.
Thank you for listening to RoadSigns, the podcast series from Transport Topics that explores the trends and technologies that are shaping the future of trucking. In this episode, we're going to consider what the future holds for electronic logging devices. The federal ELD mandate has been in place for more than a year now. While the goal of that regulation was to improve compliance with driver hours of service limits, it also means that there's now a technology platform in the cab of almost every long-haul truck on the road. So where do ELDs go from here? What does the future hold for this onboard technology? Those are the questions we'll set out to answer in this episode. We've already seen ELD providers introduce many add-on applications that aren't required by the ELD mandate, but use that same technology platform to help carriers run their businesses more efficiently. Apart from electronic logs, ELD suppliers are offering applications that automate vehicle inspection reports and IFTA fuel tax reporting, apps that track vehicle location and monitor fuel economy, driver performance, vehicle health, and much more. And many drivers are now accessing those features right on their mobile devices. Perhaps most significantly, companies will be able to utilize all the data collected by ELDs to enhance planning and freight visibility across the entire industry. To unpack all of this, we're going to speak with a pair of guests who are helping to build this future. A bit later, we're going to bring in Jay Ranganathan, Head of Product, Data Science, and Design at Keep Truckin', one of the more successful new technology vendors that entered the industry ahead of the ELD mandate with a mobile app-based ELD system. But first, I'm thrilled to welcome Norm Ellis, a veteran of the trucking technology business who's now president of eRoad, another supplier of ELDs. Thanks for joining us, Norm.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So eRoad is still a relatively new player in North America, but you're an industry veteran, having spent many years at Qualcomm and elsewhere in the industry. So you've really seen the trucking technology sector grow and evolve over the years. So I'd really like to just start by getting your take on how much technology has transformed the trucking industry over the past few decades, including just recently with the impact of the ELD mandate.
Sure, Seth. Glad to chat with you about that. I think if you go back just a little bit, and we'll come to the mandate for sure, because it's obviously very critical right now. But back in the days, when technology in cab and communications in cab started in the 80s, right, there were a lot of studies done on the impact, and particularly as you got into the 90s. And I recall this from my experience that they thought that the advent of wireless communications in trucking specifically would have an impact of 3 to 5% on the gross GDP. That was 20 years ago. They thought that. Now again, I don't know that anybody ever proved it, but there were testimony before Congress at the time that invention of wide area communications in transportation specifically would have a profound impact on GDP, i.e., just-in-time inventories and all the things that you can support when you know where the vehicle is, when it's going to arrive, right? What's on the vehicle, all those kind of things. And of course, that's been being done for several decades now. And now I think what's happened with ELD is that you've expanded it now to not just the medium and large carriers, but to all carriers potentially will now have the advantage to participate in the productivity increases that are gained by having that kind of communication capability.
Yeah, it really is remarkable, here in 2019 to think back to a day when trucks weren't wirelessly connected and when we didn't have these communications capabilities, and we were all really just kind of operating in the dark and hoping everything is where we thought it would be. So we've certainly come a long way. And just kind of looking now at where we are with the ELD mandate, which of course just went into effect over a year ago, that only requires carriers to electronically record drivers' hours of service, and all the other capabilities beyond that are optional. But this is a platform, an onboard technology platform that carriers of all sizes can now use to support a lot of other capabilities to improve their businesses. So Norm, do you see the ELD rollout really paving the way for further technology adoption, especially for some of those smaller carriers that probably purchased onboard technology for the first time, really just to comply with the mandate?
Yes, Seth, I most definitely do. And I can speak from personal experience here at eRoad that, when we sold through the 2017 pre-mandate of December, people were taking the ELD only package because it was less expensive than ones that had other capability in it. But we are getting every day, we get calls from existing customers that say, hey, I know you can do IFTA tax. I know you can do safety management. I know you can do other things, geofencing to understand where my vehicles are when they arrive, when they depart for detention purposes. And we get calls every day into our customer success team where people want to upgrade because they recognize, hey, I got this platform in there, and for the extra $3, $4, $5, $10, whatever it may cost to add additional capability, it's well worth the return on investment. So it's happening every day. And out in the market with newer prospects that everybody's adopted now. So obviously we're taking business away from competition when we can. The discussions are all more than just ELD. We've transgressed past that already, and we talk about ELD because they want to know that they get it and that it works. And not only is it self-certified, which everybody did, but that it actually does work and passes the muster of inspections at DOT, weigh stations, et cetera, which we're fortunate that we do. And but they want to talk about, hey, what else can you do, right? Can you do geofencing? Can you do my IFTA tax reporting? Can you do hard braking and overspeed and all the things that some of the larger carriers and medium-sized carriers have been enjoying for a decade or more. The smaller guys now, and we tend to go after some of the smaller guys, as you know, probably, and they're wanting to take advantage of that. So yeah, we're seeing it very, very much so in the marketplace.
Sure, and you spoke earlier to some of the additional capabilities and services that eRoad offers to your customer base. Beyond that, just basic ELD compliance. The table stakes. So let's go into that. Lots of other ELD vendors offer various features beyond electronic logs, fleet management capabilities, mobile communications, driver vehicle inspection reports, IFTA fuel tax reporting, and on and on. What types of add-on services are really gaining a lot of momentum at eRoad? What are you seeing some of the new adopters of ELDs adding first beyond ELDs?
Yeah, tax comes to mind almost immediately. If you have 3, 4, 5 trucks, perhaps filing your taxes is fairly straightforward because you only have a few vehicles. But when you get to 10, 20, 30 and larger, that becomes a bit more onerous on the fleet to keep up with that. And of course, ours and other competitors, of course, have that capability. And I think once they recognize that you can get that for a small additional fee per month, the cost they save in the back office and the fact that they know if they ever get audited, it's going to be accurate and they're not have to go back and pull a bunch of records out. We keep all the records for them, digitized and in the cloud. They can get to them at any time they need them. So I think tax would be number one. And I think right after that is safety. And they really want to make sure that their drivers aren't speeding, that they're not doing hard braking and things like that. Because not only does that lead to potential accidents, or it also impacts fuel, right? So fuel management's important, and the bigger fleets have very, very sophisticated fuel management algorithms that they use. But the smaller guys, just by managing how the driver behaves in the vehicle, not only does it improve safety, but it really has a profound effect on fuel and the MPG that they get. And that's a big part, goes right to the bottom line when you start going up from 5 MPG or 6 to 7, 8, or 9. And a lot of that can be done just on how the driver is, working with the vehicle.
Here's how to start playing transport topics on your smart speaker in 3 easy steps. Step 1, search transport topics in your Alexa app. Step 2, enable. Step 3, simply say to your Alexa device, Alexa, open transport topics, or Alexa, what's the latest from transport topics? Voila! Now you're ready to get your 1-minute briefing.
And of course, all the new adopters of technology, all the carriers out there of all sizes, especially in the smaller side of the business that didn't have onboard technology, certainly had a lot of options in the marketplace leading up to the mandate. We certainly saw just a huge flood of new technology companies enter the trucking industry with all kinds of different products to help carriers comply with the ELD rule. And eRoad has been one of the success stories from that. Not all of these companies are going to last, of course, but what does it take to stand out in such a big field? What do you think were the lessons learned from the rollout, and what carriers were really looking for at that point?
Yeah, great question, Seth. And I think usability is absolutely essential, particularly for smaller fleets that have not used technology in the past. If you're a bigger fleet and you had it for a while with one of the other competitors, and it's not that big of a transition for some of your drivers. But if you're a smaller guy and you were doing paper, like many of them were, of course, the ease of use of the product has been really critical, and we're very fortunate at eRoad that the way it was designed really makes it. We can train a driver who never used technology before in as little as 5 or 10 minutes, and once they start using it, they go back to their dispatch and driver managers and say, "Hey, I don't know what I was missing. This is really great because at the end of the day, I come in, I can sign off, and my record's complete, and I don't have to go back and fill anything in. And when they get pulled over at a weigh station, if they do get inspected, it goes very, very smoothly. They're in and out in minutes, and versus a long, drawn-out inspection. So that usability has been really important, I think. And the second thing is reliability, and we have 99.9% uptime. And I think that was we're one of the leaders in the industry in that area. And the fact that it works every day, you kind of take it for granted because you and I both use technology a lot in our roles, and it's pretty reliable, right? But in the mobile environment, it always hasn't been as reliable. And I think there's still situations out there today where people are having challenges with Bluetooth connecting and other things in this B2B environment. And in our case, we're hardwired to the ECM, so when the truck powers on, our device comes on, right? And it works every day. And so I think the usability being number one, because that's the interface to the driver. And then two, reliability, that it works every day, are two really critical things that have been helpful. And I think our customers really tend to appreciate.
Okay. And, of course, everybody who is required to have an ELD hopefully is using an ELD now. And I think that adoption and it was pretty much across the industry, and for the most part, everybody who's required to have an ELD is using one now. So, of course, from a technology vendor perspective, you're now looking at maybe competing with other vendors, but also a big part of the business becomes just providing service and support for all those systems that are out in the field. Do you see that as a big part of your business moving forward, just supporting those existing units that are out there?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that we have that level of reliability that I mentioned earlier helps that the system is up and working, very, very low RMA rates, so the hardware is well built. We're a bit unique, perhaps, that we have a tethered device that tethers into the truck, and a lot of our competitors are BYOD, so they bring their own device. Mm-hmm. And of course, there are advantages of when you have that. You can do signature capture and other things outside of the vehicle, but you also have that the connectivity thing that plays into does it connect every time appropriately, et cetera. In our case, it does, because it's hardwired to the vehicle. So yeah, I think support and customer satisfaction is critically important. It's certainly important to eRoad, and I know it's important to our competitors, but who's really good at it, and your ability to diagnose things over the air if you do have an issue. And with ECMs, Seth, you get false positives sometimes from the engine, right? So it's not our technology or even a competitor's technology per se. The engine may send you a signal you're not used to seeing, right? So you got to be able to diagnose that. So people that have those kind of capabilities to do over-the-air diagnostics and to do over-the-air software updates, which most people do, so that's good. I think that helps that customer experience really improve, and you're able to rectify something that's going adversely out in the vehicle and do it in near real time, which keeps that vehicle productive, right? And not having to come back in to be swapped out with another piece of hardware, or get another portable device if you had one nearby that you could use. So that connectivity and the reliability and consistency of it is critically important, I think, to a carrier's ability to be productive and to a vendor's ability to be a good support partner.
Great. I want to go back to one of your earlier comments about the level of technology that some of the larger trucking fleets have had really for many years, even decades now. Of course, electronic logs, but also just telematics, fleet tracking, all kinds of increasingly sophisticated forms of fleet management, more and more data, more and more information. And that's been out there, like you said, a lot of the big fleets have been doing that for quite a while now. But now that we have an industry-wide ELD rollout, we have pretty much the complete ubiquity of smart devices, apps. A lot of these same types of features are becoming more and more accessible to smaller carriers too. So Norm, I want to get your thought on how you think that might change the competitive landscape in the trucking business, or at least help the small guy remain competitive in this business?
Yeah, so I think it does give the smaller carrier the opportunity to compete. When they can share data with different third party providers, let's say in the industry, whether they're brokers or they're transportation logistics providers that are managing third party loads or even their own loads for that matter, having the ability to connect back into that and give them the same visibility that only the medium and larger carriers could give them 5 years ago or 3 years ago or even before that. I think is really important, and I think it does level the playing field from that regard, where a guy with 100 trucks, 50 trucks, 10 trucks can now look as big as a guy with 1,000 relative to their ability to share data and to effectively participate in the supply chain with other large carriers. And we've built specific programs that allow for that. We have a eRoad Share program where it allows our customers to share data. It's their data, and it's we let them manage it. But we've built tools that allow them to connect into third parties that they authorize to share that data, right? Specifically, so they can participate. So yeah, I think it has a profound effect, and will continue to. And I think it's healthy for the industry from a safety standpoint, certainly, and also for productivity. I think productivity will continue to increase. I know there's been a lot of discussions that they can't drive as many miles and things like that. And I think that gets way overweighed with the benefits they get when they are really optimized and participating, like I mentioned earlier. So yeah, I think it's pretty exciting, and I think the future is really bright.
And on that note, Norm, of course, you've really been at the forefront of technology adoption in this industry for quite a long time now. So I just want to get your final thoughts on how you see technology continuing to shape the trucking industry in the years and decades ahead.
Yeah, I think you'll see as IoT becomes even more prevalent than it is now, you'll see additional capability to be tracking things inside the trailer, not just the trailer, because that's been available for a while, as you know. But I think be able to see what's inside there, what material is in the vehicle, and that will all improve productivity some more at the manufacturing level and at the distribution level. I think advanced safety technologies, like you've already seen, Seth, with cameras and other things that have started to be very popular, and I think it has helped shape the industry some more. So I think you'll see that converge, and I think you'll see the analytics side come to life even more. Some of the big carriers have been doing some pretty advanced analytics for a while, but I think you'll see analytics become more popular in the mainstream of the transportation area as a result of the data that's being collected. And as you analyze that data, there's unfolded a benefit from that, right? For studying many things, freight flows, congestion, on down the line. And I think it's going to have a profound impact on the future of our country and our ability to be competitive worldwide.
Well, it'll certainly be fun to watch. Never a dull moment in this industry these days. So thanks again for sharing your insights and your experience. A lot of really interesting perspective. Thanks again, Norm.
No worries, Steph. Thank you for the opportunity. Take care and have a great day.
Hello, I'm Dan Ronan, the host of Transport Topics Radio on Sirius XM Channel 146 every Saturday, 1 to 3 p.m., and then again on Sunday between 12 noon and 2 p.m. Eastern Time. I hope you'll join me as every week we bring you the high-quality journalism that you've come to expect at Transport Topics and bring it to you on the radio. For more information about the next program and to get your free 30-day access code, head to ttn.ws/radio1. That's ttn.ws/radio1. Thanks for listening.
Next on RoadSigns, we're thrilled to welcome Jay Ranganathan, Head of Product, Data Science, and Design at Keep Truckin', an ELD supplier. Thanks for joining the program, Jay.
Thank you for having me here.
So the ELD mandate has been in place for more than a year now, and most long-haul trucks now have some kind of technology platform in their cabs. So what's next for ELDs and in-cab technology? Do you believe that the small and mid-sized carriers who adopted ELDs because they had to in order to comply with the regulation will now go further and add more services to improve and automate other aspects of their businesses?
Great question. First of all, while the ELD mandate has been around for a year, there's still a substantial number of vehicles that are going to be adding ELD to their systems over the coming year. This is driven by a few factors: the end of the AOBRD extension, as well as interstate mandates kicking in. And finally, I think you all know that Canada has been talking about implementing its own mandate, and that's going to affect fleets that operate across the United States and Canada for sure. So there's still more work to be done on the ELD side alone, and we have to make sure to handle all the needs of customers in those areas. But you're absolutely right. ELDs are really, in many ways, a gateway. What you get with the ELD is a pretty rich set of sensors that can help you optimize various aspects of your business. This is telematics data has generally been used by larger carriers traditionally, but the ELD is actually made. The ELD, in addition to modern technologies such as cell phones, has made it possible to have the same kinds of rich telematics access to smaller fleets. This allows you to do everything from optimizing things like fuel usage to utilization rates and vehicle downtime. And one of the big things that you do get out of all of this data is benchmarks, population benchmarks across multiple fleets. So you can start understanding how you're doing relative to your peers and start optimizing the areas of your business where you are either ahead or behind in terms of your opportunities.
Absolutely, certainly, like you said, is a gateway to a lot more capabilities, analytics, new features, and applications you can add beyond the core electronic logging requirement. So on that topic, I'm curious to learn more about what you've seen at Keep Truckin'. How many of your customers today are ELD only, and how many of them are utilizing other features and applications to improve other areas of their business?
While we started off clearly focused on the ELD market, we ourselves rapidly expanded to provide more capabilities. This includes everything from asset management, basic navigation capabilities, communication and messaging, as well as utilization reports. But along with the core set of things that we provide, we also invested heavily in our partnership ecosystem. So we have an app marketplace that allows our fleets to connect to other applications of interest to them. And as a representative example, right now, we have more than 100,000 trucks today that are using at least one integration outside of our core business with a partner. Within 3 months, we got folks doing this. So it's very clear that while the ELD mandate is what drove our adoption, people immediately realize the value they can get by integrating with our partners, using our other capabilities, things of that nature. It's been a rocket ship in terms of how much people leverage our app marketplace ecosystem right now.
Well, that's fascinating, and I have to ask you, what types of applications do you find are most popular beyond the core ELD? Among your customers, what are maybe the second and third applications that are most popular for them right now?
So there are applications within the context of our fleet management solution. This includes asset tracking, dispatch, document management, things of that nature. But in the marketplace side, we're also seeing a lot of uptake for navigation apps, fuel management apps, as well as maintenance apps. Of course, TMSs are prevalent, and TMS integrations are becoming du jour for us. We work with many TMS vendors to make sure that they're fully integrated with our systems as well. But these are the classes of apps that we see most often being used in conjunction with our work.
Yeah, many of the features that some of the large carriers in the trucking industry have been using for a long time, but increasingly a lot of this, these capabilities are more available to the smaller players.
That's exactly right. And in fact, I think many of the things I'm talking about are not news to large enterprise carriers, but in the small to mid-size fleet segment are somewhat new to their operations. And they're clearly jumping on with a great fervor now that it's easy to access these capabilities.
Sure. And, another capability that's really gotten a lot of momentum lately in the trucking industry is onboard video.
Mm-hmm.
And Keep Trucking, of course, it recently introduced a dash cam that connects with the ELD.
Yep.
So, you hear about liability protection, you hear about driver safety, driver coaching as some of the reasons for the adoption of onboard video. So why did Keep Truckin' decide to get into that aspect of the business? And do you see it becoming more and more common in the years ahead?
Yeah, so if you think about the ELD mandate itself, its primary purpose was to improve safety. We tend to think of ELDs as something to do with compliance, but if you get to the root of the matter, it's all about safety. And we saw the camera as a natural extension on what we were doing before. In fact, recently, I think the AAA published a report which suggested that when dash cams are deployed, they reduce incident rates by nearly 20x, which is a huge amount of accident reduction. So we see this as a great opportunity to make an impact on safety. And by the way, safety is super important because it makes our highways safer. It also has a direct financial impact to fleets. More and more insurance companies are thinking about how to leverage this kinds of data to reduce insurance rates. That comes both in two ways. One is from a pure when an incident happens, how do you handle that most effectively? How do you understand what happened? How do you make sure it's handled quickly and safely? But also, just when you come into prevention, there's so much you can do when you start understanding patterns of behavior and being able to give very specific guided feedback in potentially very quickly after any incident happens. Like, for example, you have a heartbreak because you followed too closely to the car in front of you. If we have the camera capability, we understand the context in which a vehicle is operating, we can give drivers immediate feedback saying, hey, this is what happened and this is why you should keep a certain distance from your car in front of you or what have you. So that combination of being able to handle incidents when they happen cleanly and being able to give much more guided and targeted education, we really believe is going to be a dramatic improvement in safety, which results in drivers being happier, reducing insurance costs. So for us, it's just a natural extension of what we do, and we do expect this to be growing quite dramatically across trucking in the United States.
Yeah. Next, I want to talk a little bit about the ELD market and just the sheer number of players that entered this space. Really in the years and months leading up to the mandate, there was just an influx of new companies that jumped into this industry ahead of that. The last time I looked, there were more than 400 different ELDs or product variants listed on FMCSA's online ELD registry.
We count it regularly.
Yes, right. And of course, not all of those products caught on. It's just way too many. But Keep Truckin' is one of the suppliers that really did get a lot of traction as the industry went through this process. So how do you differentiate yourself as an ELD supplier really in such a crowded market?
Well, we think of this in three ways. First of all, we want to make sure that the services we provide go beyond pure compliance management. And so we try to make sure that once we have this ELD in, the set of capabilities you're unlocking is significantly greater than just managing your mandate requirements. That's one aspect which is pretty appealing to our customers. Additionally, let's be honest, things like the mandate are all points of friction for a trucker who's trying to do his or her job. They're not trying to spend their time learning a complex application and figuring out how to use it. They want it to be minimally invasive in their life. They want it to be really easy to use so that they can get on with doing what they're there to do, which is move the truck from one place to another. And so we spent a lot of time and energy trying to make sure that the experience is really simple, easy to use, and gets out of the way as quickly as possible when it doesn't need to be interfering with their operations, but it's available very easily when they do need us. But this goes beyond just the product experience. This also goes into things like the support experience. If you ever have an issue, we made it super easy in the app to identify and press a button to call us so that a support agent is available 24/7. Of course, trucking doesn't operate in 9-to-5 schedules. It operates all day long. And so we want to make sure that there's really good support. If there's a problem, we're always on hand to answer it. This is how we think about it. Really high quality customer experience, both in the product and in the support, and a rich set of capabilities that makes us more valuable than just meeting the compliance requirements. I think that's really the set of things we did that distinguished us in the market and allowed us to succeed.
Okay. And with all these different companies that have offered and introduced ELD products, do you think we'll see more consolidation in the market, just given the high number of suppliers out there?
Yeah, I find it, obviously, I'm not going to try to be Nostradamus here, but I do find it hard to believe that we're going to have 440 ELD options next year. As an instance, we've already started to see some of this. There's been a few companies that have decided to get out of this space, and I expect that will continue to accelerate over the coming years and months and years. But I certainly don't want to prognosticate too much about my ability to predict the future. I definitely don't think we're going to be at 440 next year. Let's put it that way.
Fair enough. We'll see how it all
Yep.
shakes out. It's a market that does need to sort itself out a
Yep.
little bit, and I
I think
it'll be determined in large part by what happens in the field and
Right.
and what the fleets experience. And
Yeah,
the
and
carriers
I will
experience.
say that I think being purely focused on the ELD side of the house and providing no other sophisticated functionality will be a limiting factor for many of these companies' growth. So it's going to, I think, if you're going to make the investment in ELD, the expectation of having a richer set of functionality in your toolbox will just be given for most of the fleets who choose to buy these solutions.
Sure. And what we've seen really with the implementation of the mandate and how the ELD market has changed, it's really changed at least what some of the vendors are doing with the way that they deliver the technology. So traditionally, many of the large fleets that have been using onboard computers or electronic logging systems, in some cases for even decades, they've typically used hardwired in-cab terminals, and there's still a lot of large fleets that are doing that that still prefer that. But really, with the mandate, we've seen a lot of the smaller carriers gravitate more toward using phones and tablets as the in-cab display that the driver's using, and that's the case with. That is the case with Keep Truckin' and many of the other vendors that are out there, the newer ones that have entered the industry. So, in your perspective, Jay, just how much has the use of mobile devices opened up the ELD market, especially for those independent drivers and small fleets?
I actually think this is completely game changing. It's not something that people tend to spend a lot of time thinking about, but of course, mobile devices are even in the in the worldwide economy. They're not that old in the grand scheme of things. Apple's first phones came out in 2007 or something of this, 2006, 2007, and so it's not like some historical dinosaur which we just suddenly started noticing. But there's been some profound reasons why the cell phone is going to be a game changer here. First of all, it lowers the cost of the barrier to entry dramatically. Now, the pricing we can manage with mobile devices being pervasive is much, much lower than what you'd have to do with some of those traditional solutions. But it's not just a pricing thing. It's also the flexibility that a mobile device provides. It has a internet connection at all times. It's a platform. You can have many different apps where traditionally one of those hardware systems required you to have every app come from the developer of the hardware systems, and updating that was something that you'd only do very, very rarely. Mobile devices get replenished every couple of years, so you're getting the latest generation of capabilities all the time in your fingertips. Additionally, you want the best of breed mapping solution, you can put that in your app next to your ELD app. You want the best of breed fuel management solution, you can put that in your app. You get to pick and choose the best components, which is honestly something which is not very easy to do in the past. And by the way, additionally, the mobile device is flexible. You can take it out of your truck. If you want to take photos for vehicle inspection, you couldn't really lug the legacy devices out of the truck and do that. You can just take your phone out and start snapping photos outside. So there's just a sea change in the flexibility that the mobile device platform provides with its continuous internet connectivity, the ability to install any app that you like, and being able to move it as you see fit. It's just unlocks a world of opportunity for anybody here in running these fleets.
Sure. And one final question for you, Jay. So now that we have ELDs really permeating across the trucking industry and really lots of additional technology and applications, as we've discussed, on top of that, the industry as a result is really beginning to capture even more data on freight operations.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to get your thought on where that's heading. How will companies like Keep Truckin' and your carrier customers use this information in the years ahead now that we're capturing all this additional information?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. The data from ELDs do create a game-changing opportunity. I believe we're actually at the cusp of a small revolution in trucking in terms of the ability to optimize your operations. And this comes down to roughly, the way we think about there's three major pieces here. How do you identify operational issues in your fleets? or predict them before they happen? How do you address them? And then how do you monitor progress against these issues? This spans the gamut from your fleet vehicle maintenance and fuel usage to how you understand when to move your assets from one location to another, to safety. There and even navigation and routing are going to change dramatically when you have the incredible flexibility of saying, "Hey, I can see based on my HOS clock and the time I need to get to this delivery point and the traffic that's building up and the weather patterns, I can dynamically keep updating my route and my ETAs. So I know exactly how far out I'm going to be, when I'm going to have to make up time, when I'm going to be late, when I need to call the shipper. There's so much power you get when you have this like super continuous data stream that allows you to do a much better job identifying problems, a much better job addressing them, and a much better job monitoring progress against these things. I really think this is going to permeate every aspect of a fleet's operations over time.
Certainly a lot of opportunity to do more and more with the information that we're capturing, and it will certainly be fun to watch. Jay, thank you so much for taking your time. Always appreciate getting your insights and taking some time out to chat with us.
Again, thank you for having me.
Did you know you can ask Alexa to open Transport Topics? In just 1 minute, you will hear the biggest trucking headlines of that day. Be prepared and start your morning off right with Transport Topics.
Before we close, let's review what we've learned and reconsider our original question of what the future holds for ELDs. The ELD mandate marked a major shift in technology adoption as carriers moved away from paper logbooks and installed various forms of e-log devices in their trucks. But this is only the beginning. There's now an opportunity to use these technology platforms for so much more. Capabilities that used to be available only to larger fleets are now increasingly accessible to small carriers and individual drivers. And the industry now can benefit from improved visibility to vehicle location, shipment status, and freight hauling capacity. In the coming years, we'll see fleets and technology companies develop new ways to harness this data that is now available through ELDs. Carriers and logistics planners should be able to make better dispatching decisions based on better information, resulting in a more efficient industry for shippers, fleets, drivers, and everyone involved in the transport of goods. The next episode of RoadSigns will go one step further by exploring the potential for artificial intelligence and machine learning in the transportation industry. Until then, I'm Seth Clevenger. Thank you for listening.